Unique people leading unique lives shape and inform Iowa City. This community is enhanced by these women and men who live in our midst, working, teaching, creating. Welcome to a series of conversations with people who have stories to tell. Join my special guests and me, Ellen Buchanan, in a series of interviews called One of a Kind. Rosalie Braverman, a longtime resident of Iowa City, was born in 1910 in an area we now know of as Poland. Rosalie spent the first 11 years of her life in an area torn by deprivation, war, and separations. Her memories of this period in Eastern Europe reflect an appreciation of family and a keen sense of history. Following some really difficult times, Rosalie immigrated to America, and she arrived in the United States in 1921 with her mother and sisters to join her father in Omaha, Nebraska. After attending the University of Nebraska and working a year, she enrolled at the University of Iowa. And while at the university, she met her future husband, David Braverman. Dropping out of college to marry and have children, Rosalie returned to college and obtained her degree in 1965. Her husband's family was originally from a town not far from Grajewo, Poland, where Rosalie was born. Iowa City became home to David and his brothers who were in the grocery business. Rosalie and David raised 5 children in Iowa City: Mace, Richard, Corinne, Eloise, and Jody. Rosalie is active in the Iowa City Women's Club and her synagogue. She has a keen interest in arts, literature, and history. Rosalie and the Braverman Foundation have generously supported higher education, Jewish programs, the synagogue, social services, cultural organizations. Welcome, Rosalie, to One of a Kind. I think this is going to be a real interesting story, and I know your history in Poland in your first 11 years, you could write a book about that, right?
Yes, indeed, I could.
Tell me about your early memories in Poland, where you were born in 1910.
My early memories was not in Poland, but in Russia. Poland became independent after being occupied by Russia since 1795. And through the Versailles Treaty, where all occupied little countries before were made independent, and Poland was one of them. Poland became independent in January of 1919.
Right after the end of World War I.
Right after the end of the World War.
Tell me about your parents, your father, your mother.
Well, my father could not show us any work or any trade at all in Russia at that time. So he got permission from the Russian government and also from the German government to do business in Germany, since we lived only about 2 miles away from the German border. Mm-hmm. In fact, we used to walk there quite often to the border. Mm-hmm.
Across it. So he worked in Germany and came back?
And came back for holidays and special occasions.
Mm-hmm. And so your mother, how many siblings did you have?
I had 2 brothers and 2 more sisters. We were 5 altogether.
Mm-hmm. What was your mother like, Rosalie?
Well, my mother, she was one of a kind. She was satisfied staying home and nurturing the children, gave them a wonderful, wonderful education as far as man to man is concerned, how to behave towards other people. And I think through her, I got this sense of loving my fellow man. She was very artistic, but she didn't have a chance to show her artistry. But she used to make up jingles for us. And
do you remember any? That was quite a while ago.
Quite a while. And then our house was full of treasures. Mm. She loved plants, and she also loved beautiful things in the house, especially the things that she could use for the Sabbath and also for the holidays. And we had, it wasn't an armoire, I don't know what kind of thing you call it, but sort of an armoire that was, the background had mirrors, and the bottom just had enough space for linen, table linen. And she had 4 candle holders, the Russian sterling. They were very heavy and very large, and then she had all the tableware, you know, also in there, and silver cups for wine and other artifices. She was just enamored in having those things for the special days.
Well, she must have been very, very strong, because your father left to go see, I read in some research about you, that your father left to go see a sister in Nebraska, and the war broke out, and this must have been obviously 1914, and you didn't see him for 6 years.
7 years.
7 years. I mean, and so your mother was raising these five children?
5 children.
And he was in Omaha, and you were in what is now known as Poland.
As Poland. But she acquired all those beautiful things before. I was told that there were no boys born in his family. He was the youngest one, and my mother had the first son. So he presented her with beautiful candlesticks. There was 2, and then she had the second son, and she got 2 more beautiful candlesticks, and they were the envy of everybody. And then she herself accumulated all the silver.
Tell me, Rosie, you were the youngest,
yes,
right? So by the time you came along, were you kind of a little spitfire? Were you kind of...
That's what they called me.
Did they?
They called me that I was the youngest from the whole family, from my father's side and my mother's side.
So there's this wonderful story, share this, when your cousin, your brothers were gone. Now one was in Italy, and...
That was after the
It was after the war.
Second war, that he went.
Oh, that he left.
He left,
After
they were all in Germany until Hitler came, you know. And then still they remained there, even though Hitler made it very nasty for the Jewish people. Yet they remained there until they were driven out.
Where did you go to school? Didn't you go to school in Germany?
Yes, I did.
Tell me this story about how you got there, how you got to Germany, because your cousin came to get you.
Well, it was right after the war between Poland and the Bolsheviks. And everything in Grajewo was in a turmoil. There was nothing left in the grocery store, nothing left in the bakeries or the butcher shops. The soldiers ransacked everything. The Russian soldiers came hungry and raggedy. They didn't even have any shoes on their feet. Their feet were wrapped in rags. The horses did not have any saddles. There was the most raggedy bunch of soldiers I've ever seen. And so then naturally, they took whatever they could. By the time they were defeated again, they were driven out of Poland. Nothing was left in Poland. So my brothers and also my cousins who lived in Germany found out the condition in Grajewo. So they sent my cousin Joseph to come to the border and see what was going on. And it was 2 of my sisters and I and cousins walked to the border and to meet him and tell him the conditions in Grajewo. And all of a sudden he says to me, "How would you like to come over and go to school in Germany?" Well, naturally I wanted to go, and my sisters urged me to go. And I said, "Well, what is Mother going to say?" I said, "Don't worry about Mother. She'll be okay. Knowing that you have it good and we don't have it good, she'll be pleased about that." So I said, how am I going to get across? So he said to me, "There are some German children playing around this section right by the border, and pretty soon the police will come along and drive them away because they're not supposed to be there. You come in over the border and you sit on the bench and play with the children. When the policeman chases them away, you go with them. And we made up where we're going to meet, and sure enough, and I says, the Polish soldiers are going to watch me. What am I going to do? He says, you tell your sisters to engage in conversation with the soldiers. While they talk to him, you come just get the border was just a big plank across. Go under there and sit down. That's what I did. And towards evening, when he said goodbye, I went with him, and we had to walk quite a distance because I had my Polish dress on. And if
you kind of stood out, didn't you?
Yes, I stood out. And listen, if the police would see me, they would know right away that I didn't belong there, would send me back. So we walked for quite a while until it got real dark, and we reached a station, and we saw a train approaching. So we got on the train. It was quite dark, and the train master just took the money from him, and he didn't even bother to give him a ticket or anything, just took the money from him. And that train stopped in a large East German city. At that time, it was called L-U, with two dots on the U. It's called umlaut, umlaut, C-K, and it was pronounced Luc. So we stopped there, and he knew some people there, so we stayed overnight there. And I was so tired, I fell fast asleep. So in the morning, the lady comes in. I say in my story, she comes in, she had high heels on, a nice dress, and I knew she had a corset on because she was so straight and no stomach, and I knew she had children. And my mother put on those clothes when she had to go to the synagogue on the Sabbath. And during the day, she just wore a skirt and a blouse and a kerchief over her head and sloppy shoes. Well, anyway, she gave me some coffee. That was ersatz coffee, and a slice of bread, and it had something on it that was very sweet. I liked it very much, and I found out afterwards it was molasses that Hoover, I think, sent to all the countries at that time. And we spread it on bread, and it was out of this world. To me, anyway, I was hungry. And we stayed there a few days, and then he said, well, we'll have to get you a coat to cover up your dress. So he went to the store and got me a coat, and that was
cover
nice.
Your dress up so you wouldn't stick out.
So I wouldn't stick out. From there, we went to Königsberg. That was, Königsberg was the seat of medicine, you might say, of the whole world. Anybody that had anything, it was just like the Rochester Clinic here, that our Königsberg. It was known all over the world as the seat of the latest medicine. So, and it was also the largest city in East Prussia. So we had to go there to get a visa for me to remain in Germany to go to school.
How long did you go to school in Germany before you left to go to the United States?
A year.
A year.
So we went to the Bureau of Immigration, and I had to tell the man at the desk how I came here, how I came across. And he started to call me the kleine Schmuggler in German.
The small smuggler.
Smuggler. It has a different connotation over there. It's the kleine Schmuggler, and there's something funny about it. So he told everybody, I had to go to every desk and repeat the story for me, and the whole room was full of laughter. And I knew German at that time. So I could understand. So my cousin was very proud of me that I answered in German. Because, prior to that, German occupied Grajewo. That was from 1915 to 1918. And we spoke German, and we learned German in school.
So after this year in Germany, who who told you that you were going to go see your father? Those
Oh,
must have
you
been-
know, correspondence opened, and my father wrote to us, and afterwards he sent us money, and
Did you know English, Rosalie?
No, not a word.
So when you sailed into Ellis Island,
Ellis Island.
you had no. Did your mother speak English?
Nobody spoke English.
So who met you at Ellis Island? Did you have relatives?
Nobody. We were a bunch of people. It was just like somebody told us, you have to go here, you have to go there. You know, we didn't know anything. But we were under the auspices of a Jewish organization at that time. And from Ellis Island, we went to Chicago. We had a cousin there, and we stayed with her for a few nights.
What was it like seeing your father after 6 years? Do you remember that? Do you have a strong memory about that?
Yeah. I thought he was much shorter than I remembered him, and he was much fatter. And, well...
Were you shy around him when you
I
first
was
saw
never
him?
shy.
You were never shy.
I was never shy. In fact...
Kleine Schmuggler, you were never shy.
In fact, you know, we called my father from Chicago to talk to him. They didn't know how to talk on the telephone. I knew. I talked to him.
It's that youngest one in the family. Okay, so you got to Omaha, you obviously learned English, and I read that you went to the University of Nebraska, and then you stayed out and worked a year for how much an hour? What did you do? Did you clerk in a store?
In the 5 and 10 century, in fact, it was Kreskis at that time. I worked every single day from 9 to 6, and on Saturday from 9 to 10, and I got $10 an hour. $10 a week. And on the way to work on Monday morning, I stopped at the bank and deposited the $10. I didn't even have the luxury of buying a bottle of pop for 5 cents. I wanted to put the $10 in the bank.
What were you saving for, Rosalie?
I was saving to go to school.
So did you save, and you obviously saved enough to come to the University of Iowa?
No, in the meantime, we bought a house and we didn't have enough money for a down payment, so they took my money out from the bank and got the house. But my sister...
So how did you get to college then? Who paid for it? Who helped you?
When I came here, my sister had a job in Chicago. She had her master's degree in dietetics from Creighton, University of Creighton, and she got a job in the hospital. I think it was, well, anyway, in the hospital there. And she told me she was going to send me $25 a month.
In those times, that was probably enough, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't enough?
Well, I was the kind that somebody says, come on, let's have lunch together.
Oh.
I couldn't say, no, I don't have any money. So I took the 50 cents and bought lunch, and the next day I didn't eat anything.
So you came to the University of Iowa, and you met your husband.
Yeah, the third day I was here, I met him.
Third day?
The third day I was here.
So then you eventually got married and became a mother. And you put your college degree over on the side for a while. And
absolutely.
then 30 years later, you got you a degree, which I think is quite remarkable.
Well, I was going to go there before when my fourth child was, she was about 13. I said, now that's the time to go back to school. Lo and behold, I found myself pregnant again. So I had to postpone it until he was old enough to take care of himself, go to school. Then that was...
And you told me before the interview that you were in drama?
Yeah.
Before I go on with your story, tell me what happened to your two brothers who stayed in Europe.
Well, pardon me. My oldest brother went to Poland to attend the wedding of Joseph. And in Poland, they made him a Polish citizen. My younger brother did not go to Poland to the wedding. He stayed in Germany, and they called him a man without a state, Staatslos, they called it in Germany. Well, in 1937, the Germans said to him, get out. We don't care where you go, but get out of Germany. So he went to Italy, he and his wife. And they had 2 daughters, and the 2 daughters went to Sweden. It's called the Aliyah. That's also the Jewish organization saved the Jewish kids and sent them to neutral countries to live until the war was over. So naturally, after the war, they came to their parents in Italy. So he went away. My older brother, who was a Polish citizen, Kristallnacht, they came to his house, 1 o'clock in the morning. Get up, take your 2 children and your wife, and just carry a little sack, no more, and come with us. So he was sent to Poland, and that's where he got killed, when his whole family. While my other brother, who was in Italy, and actually they saved him, although when Mussolini made a pact with Hitler, it wasn't so good for him. He was also put in prison, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. But the Italian people were very good to him.
I want to ask you, Rosalie, in your 80-plus years, who's made a difference in your life? Who's influenced you?
Who has influenced me? First of all, my cousins, who were also refugees from Germany. That was Joseph's brother and his wife. They came, and when we talked, and they gave me a lot of encouragement. I had a very, very big inferiority complex, and they told me not to have it. So since then, I became very active in the women's club. And then when they had contests, one time they had a contest to who would get the most points for knowing so many different things, and that was a Jewish organization. And a girl who graduated college, they took her, they left me out, and she didn't want to do it, so as a substitute, they took me, and I got first prize.
And you got first prize. You showed them, didn't you? With that wonderful, you must have had a good teacher along the way to encourage you.
Well, I don't know. And then after that, in 1948, there was a freedom train going through every town that had railroads, and the freedom train stopped here. Through my activities with the women's club, they asked me to organize a pageant.
Used your drama interest.
And I did, and I must say that the paper afterwards said it was the best pageant they ever had. That was really a nice pageant, even though I have to say it myself.
Well,
it was a wonderful pageant.
I remember that freedom train coming through the communities. You bet. I read about it.
Oh, yes. And I was asked to do that. And then I got a little bit more self-confidence. And
I read that you had Iowa City, and that many viewers remember Maud Raitt as a teacher.
In the Council Bluffs, that was my hometown.
I think that's remarkable. Maud, I don't know what her maiden name was.
Adams.
Maud Adams. So she taught you English?
No, she did. No, I was already in high school.
Oh. No, I meant English literature. Did she teach? Was she in English? What did she teach?
She taught French and Shakespeare. She was the most marvelous person I ever met. She had a great deal of influence over me too. So she never told us you and you. She always considered the whole class as you people. Oh, she was so good.
So, did you ever think about wanting to be a teacher too? Did that ever interest you?
Well, my mother was very shy, so my oldest sister was sort of my mother figure, and she said, "It's nice if you would become a dentist." So I said, "Okay." And then she had some experience with the dentist. They had, they had to, had to work with all kinds of people. Say, "I better not." So I says, "Okay, then I'll take drama."
A part of your story, Rosalie, is that your mother.
Yeah.
You have 5 children.
Yeah.
Tell me where they're living. Your 5 children. You have 3 sons and 2 daughters.
Oh, my 5 children?
Yes.
Well, I have two sons are in Iowa City. There were three sons. Jody, he was in Iowa City 2 years ago, and then he decided to go to Colorado and fend for himself. So he's in Colorado now. One daughter lives in California, and one lives in Pleasantville, which is a suburb of Davenport.
What do you consider your maybe greatest strengths, besides being a little spitfire? And
My greatest things? I really think that I can adjust to any situation. I experienced everything except death. That I haven't experienced it yet.
yes, not yet.
I have to finish my autobiography.
Right, that's right.
But I really can adjust.
How is your autobiography coming? Are you enjoying writing it? Brings up a lot of memories.
Oh, yes,
You must
indeed.
have a very good memory.
The dear Lord endowed me with a wonderful memory.
That's good.
You know, you can ask me anything about Iowa City from 1929 on, I can tell you.
You and Irving Weber, you're our treasures here.
Don't you think that I told Irving Weber?
I bet you've told him a lot.
Sure. He and I are very good friends.
And I know you love to read, don't you? And you exercise? Somebody said you walk daily?
I don't walk anymore, but I do exercise.
You do exercise. And you read? You like to read?
I love to read.
What kind of books do you enjoy reading for pleasure?
Oh, I think I like everything.
Everything.
I don't have any special kinds.
Fiction, nonfiction?
Nonfiction book.
Nonfiction.
The best nonfiction book I read is the autobiography of Arthur Rubinstein. That was the most beautiful biography I read. He went through a lot too.
Tell me, what have you enjoyed the most, perhaps, of living in Iowa City?
The opportunity that I can do anything that I want to do in Iowa City. The only thing is, it's not enough hours in the day. The Maybe Theater and the Hanchey Theater, they afford so much.
You must be very pleased when the Hillel named the chapel after you and your husband, the Braverman
Yes.
Chapel.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a complete surprise, or did you know that that was going to happen?
That was a surprise.
That was a surprise.
A surprise too.
Wow. That
And
was
when
a
we
lovely
celebrate-
honor.
Yeah. Then when we celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary, they named a room after us, and then afterwards, they knew that my husband was sick, mortally sick. So we had our picture taken together, and our pictures are in the synagogue, and one is at Hillel and one is in the synagogue.
Well, I know you're going to finish that autobiography, and I hope I can see and read it sometime when you complete it. I'd like to do
hope
that.
so.
Thank you for being my guest on One of a Kind.
Pleasure was all mine.
My guest has been Rosalie Braverman, who has lived over 60 years in Iowa City. Born and raised in what is now Poland, surviving World War I in a war-torn country, Rosalie's story has been profoundly shaped by these experiences. She is currently writing her autobiography. After immigrating to the United States in the early 1920s, she lived in Council Bluffs before moving to Iowa City to attend the University of Iowa. Rosalie and her husband David raised 5 children in Iowa City: Mace, Richard, Corinne, Eloise, and Jody. Rosalie and the Braverman Foundation have contributed generously to various causes and organizations in our community. The chapel at Hillel House was named the Braverman Chapel in honor of Rosalie and her husband. Active in her synagogue, interested in the arts and literature and history, Rosalie is known for her curiosity, frankness, determination, and inquiring mind. Rosalie Braverman is one of a kind.